Welcome back to Shh. We don't talk about that. Today it's all about spaghetti and waffles and how to make it work.
I love that title.
I know. And how does that sound like it makes sense, right? Like, did you accidentally tune into a cooking podcast that has gone horribly wrong? No, you did not. You did not, my friends. We are going to explain what spaghetti and waffles means, and part of the way we're going to do that, you'll notice for those who are on YouTube, and soon, as soon as he speaks, but we have a third guest. So this guy isn't my bodyguard. I mean, he is, but he's here today to join in. This is my wonderful husband, Keith, and he's going to join in and talk about some of our couples counseling and some of the things that we learned there, and about what it's like as a guy to go to therapy and all that jazz. So
yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
So I love spaghetti and waffles. First off, not together, but just in general.
Maybe we should explain what it is.
Maybe. That's up to you.
Well, do you remember?
Kinda. Guys, I guess, can be categorized into like a waffle, has all the different squares in a waffle. And, a guy's in that one waffle, and, women are like spaghetti. So when they have something going on, it's all over the place. It's going over here and over there, and they're thinking about all these other different things. And I'm like, but I'm in this waffle here. I'm worried about this right here. I'm in this right here. I can't worry about all this other stuff because I'm doing this right here. And then you want me to out of that waffle, and come over here into this box.
Yeah, you're
kind of like that.
It's the sections of the waffle.
Yeah,
is what we're talking about. Men are able to compartmentalize. They're able to sectionalize things and set it and go. Well, it's not in front of me right now, so I really don't need to worry about that. Versus women tend to combine things together. Well, this is going to affect that, and
because that didn't sound right.
That's okay. You do you, baby. But women tend to attach that. Well, this is going to affect the kids, and then that's going to affect dinner, and then that's going to affect when he gets home, and that's going to affect if I can do the laundry. And so that's what we mean by things being spaghetti, where it's all. Whereas guys are like, I got to pick up the kids from school. That's what I got to do. Once I pick up the kids from school, then I'll worry about dinner.
Right.
When I have dinner in front of me, we'll worry about home. Once we get that done, we'll worry about homework. And that's not to say all guys, and it's not to say all women, because it can definitely be different on either side. But in general, this is how our therapist explained to us that men and women tend to approach problems in life. And it made a lot of sense to us because it is very much what we do. I am worried about how one thing is going to affect the 10 things it's connected to. And Keith's like, I don't get it. Like, okay, so the taxes got to get done like that. And I'm like, yeah, but to do the taxes, and I got to do this, and I got to get this paperwork, and I got to get hold of this. I got to take the time, and I'm the one who's got to do it all. And and he's like, oh, shit, sorry. I'm going to go over to my room now. I'll be in my office. No. That's not true, but
so that's kind of what spaghetti and waffle is. But we did do couples counseling, and it was very enlightening to me. Joanna, as you've known, if you've been listening, she's been through quite a bit of therapy, and just being with her along her journey, I learned so much. Just not even going to therapy, but going to therapy definitely helped strengthen everything between us. It took it on a deeper level emotionally, where you had to sit in your emotions and feel them and talk about it openly, which it can be difficult, but it was totally worth it. I learned so much, and just myself and why I do the things that I do, and why other people do the things that they do, and just thinking about my childhood and the way I grew up, and it makes sense and why I do certain things or don't do certain things or have trouble or difficulty doing certain things. And it just made me really think about just society in general, because there's a lot of hurt people out there, and it helped me realize that, what could potentially be happening with that person to make me give a little bit more grace to people, because you never know what people are battling. So, but the couples counseling really helped strengthen our relationship. It just really got me into a deeper level with her, and I'm so grateful for it.
Well, and it's funny because we didn't go because we were in flames or anything. We were having terrible problems. We would bicker. It was nothing terrible.
And that's another thing.
It wasn't daily.
Right. I'll say, it was good to hear of all the good things that we did.
Yes.
Or do. I should say do, not did, but the good things that we do together. Just kind of going over those things and being told and reminded that you guys are doing these things really well. You guys, you don't name call, you don't yell, you don't, do this, that, or the other. So there's a lot of good things that we do. And we just wanted we wanted to strengthen everything. Like I said, we weren't really in trouble. We just wanted to strengthen things.
Right.
And just keep moving forward with our relationship and our lives. So.
Well, and I am honest with our listeners that after therapy, there was a big issue that came out that we didn't recognize was there. Mm-hmm. And part of that came from just like we only did couples therapy for about 6 months.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
And we built a lot in that time, but
we're masters, by the way.
Yeah, according to our therapist.
Yes,
but it still didn't open up every door. It didn't open. It didn't shine the light on every single problem that we had. And there was one that was large that we're going to talk about at a later podcast. But it had been kind of an ongoing problem, but one that I think we didn't realize was as big as it was until it finally just kind of blew up in our faces. And everything that we had done through couples therapy helped us weather that.
Which is huge.
Yeah, in a way that we wouldn't have been able to do before.
Repairing is so important. Coming back to repair.
How you repair, with each other. So, and we learned some emotion-focused therapy. We did not do a true emotion-focused therapy program. We did loosely follow it. Our therapist was in the process of finishing up his continuing education for it, and that was what he was learning. So he was being taped and corrected on that, but we followed that loosely, and then we did the Gottman seminar, and he and I did that together. We just ended up to get lucky enough to have that be presented to us. It wasn't something that came across our radar. Right. We were looking for it. It was presented to us. We were able to do it, and I am still so grateful. It was a one-day seminar that we went, and we just spent the whole day and did it, and for me, it was life-changing. It opened up my eyes on a lot of different thought patterns and perspectives. Even though we were doing a lot of it, to have it phrased in that way towards you and to have it reflected back to you as a healthy means of communication.
Sure.
And framed in such a way that it was like, hey, and you should do it this way, and this will help this problem too. Mm-hmm. And also to help you be able, as couples, you see other couples talk about the same kind of problems.
Yeah.
And to see them dealing with the same kind of issues, or to hear them talk about problems and go, we don't do that. I'm so glad we don't do that. Because there were a couple that we were like, dang, he just did right off.
That Gottman method is what really, I think, strengthened the things that we did well or do well.
It reinforced and kind of reflected that back, without us having to do more than just a seminar. Right. Because I read the book. You have not had a chance to read the book, but you're going to. Mm-hmm. But you did do a lot of the workbook when we were in the seminar together.
Yeah, we did it together.
Yeah, we did that. And going back over it, just looking at it, and we're going to get into it deeper, but it was interesting to me, even though we didn't specifically touch on it in therapy with Dave, where we didn't know we were doing Gottman or anything. We were already doing a lot of this stuff. Right. Before we got to therapy. Yeah. And a lot of it just has to do with like just care and compassion for your partner. Yes. And giving, to receive, and those things that, like I said, we'll get into deeper, but there were a couple of really basic thoughts that came up as I was reading the book, that although we do it, I just never thought, and I told you about it, and we'll talk, and I never thought and framed it that way. Gottman has a way of boiling it down to such a simple, I mean, it's just such a simple way to take it in. And it's pleasurable. He uses anecdotal stories, and so I'm looking forward to getting into that. But one of the things that I thought was important for you to share was you didn't originally want to go to therapy.
No, that's fine. That's fine. I don't need it. I'm good.
He's like, I'm good. There's nothing wrong with me. Why do I need to go?
I don't understand. What's the problem here?
Dirty fucking liar.
I am going to have to go in a minute here, and I do want to say one thing, and that is don't give up. Keep trying. You might not find the right therapist if you decide to go that route on your first try. It might take a couple. Just don't give up. Keep pushing, keep trying, and you'll get there.
Yeah.
Thank you, Keith, for joining us.
Yes,
I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
It's hard for men to conceive the notion of going to counseling.
Right.
Because it's like, men don't talk about your feelings.
Nope.
Yeah.
You just shut them down, you need to grow up, be a man, blah, 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 blah.
Yep.
So being a man and being willing to be like,
and he didn't go to this for
Okay.
me. He went to this for
Right,
us, for
like-
himself too.
and then learning
That was
something. And
huge.
you're like, oh shit, this was helpful. Like,
Right.
it's so, so important.
A lot of moments that were like, oh, I'll be damned. It's worth it. It's worth it. Definitely.
Yeah,
But,
it is. I
I'm
know you
looking
gotta
forward
go.
to future visits. Take care, everybody.
Thanks,
Thank
Keith.
You're welcome.
And it's kind of cool because when I was going through like my master's program, doing the internship and whatnot, my entirety of my practicum and my internship, which was, I don't know, math weeks long, I did it primarily with just couples, all military couples. So one party was active duty and the other party was obviously the spouse or the dependent. And a lot of them were, the male party was the active duty person. And a lot of them were like, I wanted to try this, or she made me come here, but I'm willing to give it a chance. So I really appreciated that one because, I mean, it's, you wouldn't think it's easier to talk to couples. You think like that's really difficult because now there's like 2 people in a room and that's like a lot to manage. But really one person in the room is almost harder.
Yeah, I can see that.
Because it's like, at least there's something to bounce something else off of. There's almost a little bit more truth when 2 people are in the room than just one person.
Yeah.
So it was kind of cool. And then fast forward to where I am now in my own private practice, I'd say more than half of my individual clients are men. In all sorts of positions, whether they're senior officers in the military, whether they work for different government entities, whether they're law enforcement, like tons of different men have decided like, I can't do what I'm doing anymore, something has to change. And even the couples that I see, same thing. Like, I wanted my wife to come to couples counseling. I think that we need this, which is huge considering maybe 20 years ago, it's not the same.
Right.
A lot of women are like, we need couples therapy. And the man's like, like Keith, like, but I'm fine. Like, why would I need to go to couples therapy?
Right.
I don't need that.
Yeah, well, I originally brought it up, I don't know, probably about a year or 2 ago. And he was like, I don't need that. And then things just got a little worse and a little worse. And there was one day where I was just like crying over something. And he was like, you know what? Fine. If you want it, let's go to couples. I was like, oh, done. I picked up the phone. I had my therapist texted immediately. Like, I was like, I scheduled. Here, it's in your calendar. I didn't give him a chance to change his mind.
Yeah.
I wanted to get in because once he was like, I'll go. I knew once he said, no, I will go. I know Keith. He's ready. He'll go.
Right.
But he'll change his mind if I wait too long.
Sure. Sure.
You know, then you convince yourself like, I don't really need it. Really, we're okay. Yeah. It's okay. We can work through these things. We do work through things most of the time. But there was a couple of sticking points that we just kept getting stuck on, and it
Yeah.
seemed like it was the same thing coming up over and over and over. And that's why I was like, we need help with this.
Mm-hmm.
If it's the same problem and we can't get past it,
Yeah.
then we need somebody else to help us.
Mm-hmm.
So an outside perspective. And I told him, I don't care if we go in there and I get told that I'm the one that's completely wrong, that it's all me.
Right.
Then I would rather hear that and know what I need to change than keep doing this and keep doing the same thing and running into the same wall.
Absolutely.
And going, like, I can't get past, what do I do? I can't get past this obstacle because I can't see what the wall is.
Right.
To me, it's clear.
Mm-hmm.
You might be able to see it, but I can't.
Right.
So that's why you need it. And unfortunately, your spouse may be able to tell you you're doing this thing, but they may not be able to tell you artfully, gracefully, or clearly.
Sure.
And even if they can, you may not be able to hear it.
Mm-hmm.
But you can hear it from a third party. Because when that third party notices it, then it's like oh shit. It's not just them calling me out on oh damn, that's actually happening.
Yeah.
And that happened for him a few times too, where he was like, oh shit. That's exactly what, and for me too. It was both of us, like fireworks. Where we were just not fireworks explosion upset, but like, oh my gosh,
light bulbs going on.
Just couldn't believe it. Yeah. So, and that happened. I mean, like I said, we did the emotion focused therapy. I always thought of it like a bow tie is what his thing looked like. But when you get into the pattern of behavior and you can't get out of it, and then you keep setting each other off, what sets you back into a pattern of behavior, and you can't get out of it. But he eventually introduced us to this Gottman seminar. And taking that, I think, is what ended up pushing our relationship even closer, so that we ended up wrapping up couples therapy that much better. Like we wrapped it up really quickly, considering when we'd gone in.
Absolutely.
And I still felt like we were having a little bit of problem with him opening up, and me feeling like I had to dig and drag and
Yeah.
And then me not knowing how to communicate and causing him to stonewall, but not realizing that's what it was until I started reading The 7 Principles of Marriage.
Yeah.
So,
which is such a good book.
Yeah.
I mean, anything by the Gottmans is great.
It is. But this book, I highly recommend it for anybody in whatever state you're in a relationship. It's called The 7 Principles for Making Marriage Work. And it's a practical guide from the country's foremost relationship expert, John M. Gottman, PhD. And then Nan Silver is also listed on here. So the Gottmans are the ones who they spent a lot of time. I mean, I want you to do your spiel thing, because you have a thing.
Do my spiel thing.
Yeah, she's got a spiel.
Spiel thing.
She's got a spiel.
I love the Gottmans, and I came across them in grad school. One of my marriage and family therapist professors had talked about them, was trained and certified in the Gottman method. So the more I learned about it, I was like, oh, I really like that. Oh, I really like that. And I really enjoyed working with couples for a really long time. So eventually I will be certified in the Gottman method, because it's kind of, I wouldn't say it's the gold standard, but it's up there.
Yeah.
And not saying that it can't be used in multiple different ways, because it absolutely can be. But they have done so much research and so many different longitudinal studies, and like there's so much science within their methods, within the program itself.
Evidence-based.
Yeah, it's so evidence-based. And it's fantastic. And I'm sure that most marriage and family therapists, we utilize like some of it in some form, way or fashion. I'll tend to use like some of the quizzes and assessments that him and his wife have created. I'll tend to recommend any one of their books. The Relationship Cure is really good. 7 Principles is really good. There's another one that's on the top of my tongue, but I can't think of what it is right now. Something. But they're really good, and they're really well written, down to earth, easy to kind of read and understand, but then also to kind of put yourself into.
Easy to digest.
And essentially, like the Gottman method, if you're looking at as like an encompassing umbrella. It began in the 70s. They ended up creating what's called the Love Lab, and that was in the 80s, and it's still there today. So Love Lab is, it's in the, I believe it's at the University of Washington, in Washington State, which is where John and Julie reside most of the time. They travel a lot though. But they created their Love Lab in the school itself. So this Love Lab, and you can sign up for it. It's not super cheap, but it will give you literally every problem that you thought you knew was wrong with your marriage, and some that you had no idea was wrong with your marriage. There's cameras and audio and solutions. Yes, there's camera and audio like all over the apartment itself, and you're basically living there for a weekend, and they're recording everything. They want to see how you interact, how you have conversations, and of course you're not going to be like your normal self that you would at home, but you're also going to eventually settle in. So you may or may not bicker, but how you have conversations with your partner is going to obviously be evident to them. And then afterwards they sit down with you and they go over literally everything that they saw was going right and everything they saw that was going wrong. And here's how we can work on those wrong things in order to fix it. Mm-hmm. Because one of the hallmarks of the Gottmans is he's able to sit down with you, have you and your partner, basically he instigates an argument, which I've done that as a couples counselor, instigating an argument because I want to see how you're actually reacting in the argument. Like, what are you saying? What is your body saying? What are you not saying? What is your body not saying? Are you actually listening? At what point do all your defenses come up? And he does the same thing, only he hooks you up to all the little things that measures your heart rate and your breathing and all the things. Yep. So once the argument's done, he has been able to assess within a 94% success rate whether or not you could be on the path to divorce. Like 94%, that's pretty significant.
Yeah.
Not saying that 94% of the couples that you're absolutely, like you're there, you're on the divorce threshold, but also saying that you're not on the divorce threshold, because there's a lot of work that now you have to do to put in it to change it. So it's kind of cool, but he does it based off how you argue and then your physiological responses.
Right.
A lot of the therapists will use pieces of the Gottman's method within their therapeutic process, but to get the true Gottman experience, you need to go to a certified Gottman therapist, which is a whole long extra process of things we have to go through to be certified. But it's an approach to couples counseling. The biggest thing is it's including an assessment of your overall relationship, a way to integrate research-based interventions, which is huge. And ultimately it's based on a sound house theory. So that's kind of how the Gottmans have come to help you build your relationship from the floor up. Because if you don't have a solid foundation, your house is going to fall. Mm-hmm. So I'll get to a little bit more on the sound house theory. The goals of the Gottman method: disarm conflict within verbal communication. We want to increase intimacy, affection, and respect, because that's huge. We want to remove any barriers for stagnancy, and we want to create heightened empathy and understanding. So a lot of us that are marriage therapists, like when you're coming to marriage counseling, you're one of two couples. One, you're coming in because we just want to make sure we're on the right track. We need a little bit of tweaks, like we're here to make our relationship better. Or this is the last ditch effort to decide whether or not we're going to stay together or we're going to get a divorce. We really like it if you come in way before that.
You like it when you, Keith and I, like.
Yes, when you come in way before that,
you're like still happy and in love.
Yes.
Because
if
you're like,
already
but
at the end,
it's pissing me off.
It's a struggle.
Right.
It's a struggle to get you off the ledge if you're coming in at the end.
Yeah.
Not that it can't be done.
I can imagine just from
it's a struggle.
Some of our conversations when we finally started to open up emotionally.
Yeah.
And get real. Some of the things that like were said and the realness that happened.
Yeah, for sure.
And then we were in a good place. So I can only imagine what people say when they're not in a good place.
It can be brutal.
Yeah.
It can be brutal.
I read some of, a lot of his examples, and they're, the contempt, the criticism, the condemnation, like none of that is alive in my relationship. It hasn't, never been.
Right.
In this relationship.
Which is huge.
Yes.
But you're able to
but I
see
have
it.
had a relationship before. I am divorced, and I've dated other people. I have had relationships before that have included the Four Horsemen.
Right.
My first marriage definitely had them, and it was both of us. It wasn't just him; it was me too. You know, we were way too young to be married anyway, but we were not right for each other. And a lot of that was because we weren't willing to put in the work to make the effort. Like, you know, we didn't know.
Yeah. And you don't know what you don't know.
Exactly. Yeah.
You really don't.
Yep.
You really don't.
Yeah.
Another thing I wanted to touch on is that he didn't just, the Gottmans didn't just use this with opposite sex couples.
Right.
Like there have been tons of longitudinal studies that have been done with same-sex couples to get essentially the same result. The only thing they found different, or the only thing that stood out from same-sex couples, is within the female relationships, like our capacity for the respect and understanding and like emotional contentment was a little bit deeper and a little bit stronger than with the same-sex male couples or the opposite-sex relationships.
Well, and that makes sense if you think about how society teaches men what they're allowed to share about their emotions, what it means when they share any kind of emotion that is not happy or angry, and how that then can often be turned into it's a weakness.
Absolutely.
And so males in our society are taught that you are either you're happy, you're just even keel, or you're pissed for a damn good reason, and you're showing people why, and you're out there like rattling chains. But there's to be deeply sad over something, to be just deeply remorseful over something, to feel guilt, those kinds of things are seen as weaknesses.
Yeah.
And instead that I having gone through enough therapy now, I can see how they're strengths because they allow you to see all parts of yourself.
Yes.
But
which is huge.
Yeah, but it's taking a while for our society to get to a place where men are allowed to be that way. And that's one of the things that I had told you about with Gottman. He talks about in this book, in the 7 Principles of Marriage, at some point he went on a talk show, and his work was basically boiled down to, yes, dear, whatever you say. Like, that's what a man's supposed to do, is just say, yes, dear, whatever you say.
Right.
Give in to a woman no matter what she wants. Talking about letting women influence you is what he was talking about.
Right.
And give in to a woman whatever she wants. And then that's going to make your marriage better, is how it was twisted in the news. And then Saturday Night Live did a parody on it, and his work was kind of twisted a little bit out there. But that's not what the basis of it is at all. It's talking about compromise on both sides.
Yes.
It's talking about being on an equal standing and meeting each other in the middle. And he even gives examples of of like a couple where the man makes the decisions. He makes the decisions in the house. He is the decision maker. But he doesn't make those decisions until he and his wife have gone through all of the aspects of it.
Right.
And come through and come to a thing that said, yeah, we can both agree on this. And he goes, okay, I'm going to make my decision now. This is what I'll do for the family.
Right.
And then she agrees with that because that's their dynamic that they have set up for their household. It's a deeply religious household, which doesn't surprise me that that's the dynamic that they have set up. It works for them. But they still are following the Gottman principles of communion, compassion, support, understanding, giving and taking, non-criticism, keeping the Four Horsemen out, which we haven't talked about yet. But so it was interesting to me. And one of the other things that Gottman said that really struck me, that I don't know if people think about, but I thought about it, was if you have a friend, he used this example, if you have a friend who leaves an umbrella at your house, you go, oh my gosh, I'm so, you left your umbrella. I'll bring it to you or whatever. And you would be kind to them. You would be so thoughtful and solicitous of them. But you wouldn't say, oh, what's the matter with you? Why would you leave your umbrella here? Oh, you're always forgetting things. What's your problem? We often treat our acquaintances and our friends better than we do the person that we chose to spend our life with.
Yes.
Our life partner. the person that we chose that was going to be share our soul and our most deepest part of ourselves. And we decide that we're going to treat the grocery store clerk better.
Right.
Or, whoever that their best girlfriend.
Yeah.
Better than we are that person. And that's one of the things that Gottman says is that you have to choose your spouse. Like, it has to be us against the world. And when you are sad, even if you're mad at me, when you are sad, the world stops and I listen.
Right.
And that was profound to me. And it's not something that I'm great at doing, but I'm working on.
Yeah.
When you are upset, even if it's with me, the world stops and I listen. Because I cannot understand it. I don't listen to what you're saying. Even if I don't agree with it, I can't understand it. If I can't even listen to what you're saying.
Right.
So I found those to be really profound. But he talks about, the first signs of marital problems, and harsh startups, I think, are something that people are really, I think that's one of the biggest things that people do.
Yes.
That they could work on. It would be so easy, instead of like, why would you do that? What's wrong with you? Being like, hey, honey, I know you're really tired, but it would help me out so much if you could do the dishes. Because I have these, I've got the laundry and this
exactly.
to do. It might take a little longer to ask for it that way. But man, you're going to get a lot better results.
Because in the end, you're going to feel better and they're going to feel better and you're not going to argue.
And don't you want them to ask you the same way?
Right.
Don't you want them to come to you and say, instead of going, what's wrong with you? Why didn't you do this? Or, what the fuck or whatever. You want them to come to you and say, hey, honey, listen, I was wondering if we could talk about this. Or, when you said that thing, that hurt my feelings. Could we talk about that?
Yeah.
Instead of criticizing the person, you're talking about the activity that happened.
Yes.
So it's not about, you are a terrible person. It's that something was said and hurt my feelings.
Yes.
And we need to talk about that. Or whatever the activity. But Gottman gives so many different examples of real life scenarios that you're like, oh, I could translate that to my life. And then he gives you like little quizzes and stuff in there that you can do and stuff. But the harsh starts, and then he talks about the 4 horsemen, which are criticism, contempt, defensiveness, and stonewalling or ignoring. And stonewalling is when you basically pretend like no matter, you can't deal with it anymore. You might be flooded. Your emotions you might be going crazy inside. But you literally act like what they're saying isn't happening. They don't exist. You go on with your own life. You go on. You might leave the room. You might put in earbuds. You might put on your music. You might just walk but you don't acknowledge or interact with that person. Yeah. Or engage with them in any way, and that's stonewalling. So that was the one that I didn't understand what was happening. He was getting flooded because he would stonewall. Sure. But I didn't know what it was. And that's the only thing that he ever did out of the 4 horsemen that I was like, oh, I finally get what's happening. It was because he was getting so flooded inside. He didn't know what to say. He didn't know how to process. He didn't know what to do. Now I understand when he gets all quiet like that, he's flooded. And so I don't keep going. I just stop and go, oh, I'm sorry. Let me take a minute. Something's happened. Let's take a beat. And one of the things Gottman talks about is when that happens and you do take a break from the argument, you must take at least 20 minutes where you do not talk about, or you do not think about the argument. You don't think about the contentiousness of it. You don't think about really that person. You disconnect from all of it and go to something else. Listen to music, go for a walk, put together a puzzle, call a friend, something, but you don't call a friend and bitch about the person. That's not what it is. If you do that, your 20 minutes resets. The 20 minutes has literally got to be, it's a cleansing period of cleansing your soul, honestly, and just and you'd be amazed how much of that argument will not matter when you come back 20 minutes later. Yeah.
Because the key is you have to then still come back.
Yeah. You got to come back.
You need to have that break in order to calm down and recenter yourself.
And your nervous system gets a chance to calm down. And then all of a sudden it's like, oh, you know what? Maybe that's not as big of a deal. And you don't need to make as big of a point. There's one of the things he talks about too that I love is don't keep arguing just to get that point across. if they could just get the point, then I'll stop. Once they get it, then I'll stop. Like, he talks about we could all wear a pulse oximeter and check and once our heart rate gets to 100 beats per minute, if that's not your norm, like if your norm is 80 and it gets to 100 beats per minute, stop. Stop immediately, even if you feel like it's fine, because you're not actually listening.
Yep.
Wait till it calms down and come back.
Yep.
That's the thing. You have to wait till your whole system calms down.
Yeah.
And then come back. And then address whatever it is that really needs to be addressed.
Yeah.
Not the nitpicky shit that you wanted to make a point about, that you were just trying to get across. You know, you just want to be right.
Matter. Exactly. That stuff doesn't matter. We
Right.
need to focus on what the issue is. Talk about that. We can't bring in the kitchen sink.
No.
This is where it's spaghetti.
Right.
Us spaghettis can tend to have a problem because we want to bring in all the other things.
That's true.
And the compartment in the waffle is like, no. I can only focus on this one thing.
They're like, why you got to bring up old shit?
But if you're bringing up all this other stuff and then they get flooded and then we get upset because now they're not listening.
And they shut
walk
down.
away, they shut all of the things.
And then we receive body language from them that says, I am no longer willing to engage with you. And what we get from that body language is, I don't respect you enough to engage with you and to take the time. That's not what they mean, but that's what our society and our brains and all of the things have come together, that this is just naturally where we go. So unless we are going to thoughtfully and mindfully go a different place and say, wait a minute, that's not where I want to go. I'm not going to take it personally. He's flooded. I'm not going to take that personally. He just snapped at me. I'm going to listen to the message that he said versus how he said it.
Yes.
Tone matters. Tone absolutely matters. But there are some times where your partner can only get a message out like, you're getting off topic. That is a sign to ask you to de-escalate, to come back to topic. They may not be doing it gracefully. And you may say then, whoa, you're right. Let's take 20 minutes. Let's come back. Let's calm down.
Yeah.
But you will both you can't spring this shit on your partner in the middle of an argument and be like, oh, by the way, now we're going to take 20 minutes when we've never done it before and go and talk and we're going to be calm. And then I promise we're going to come back and talk about it later. Yeah. It's cool. Like you should be talking about these plans ahead of time. Yes. So that you have a plan for when an argument comes up, not trying to pull out the disaster manual. And that's what, that's why you do disaster protocols when you are at work or in the hospital or whatever, before there's a disaster. You pull out that manual and you learn it front to back. Yeah. Top to bottom. You should do the same thing for your marriage, for your disaster protocol, so that when there's a problem, when there is a fight, when there is a disaster that comes in from outside of the marriage, whatever it is, you know already what your pre-programmed ways are to handle it and how you're going to do it in a successful way. Yeah. And if there are ways that you stumble, you know what those are. You know ahead of time, like if I start raising my voice, he's going to get flooded and shut down. So I know I got to keep my tone at a certain level. And if I start raising my voice, that means I need to take a step back and calm down. Yes. So he can still hear me, because I want him to hear me. Yeah. And he can't change whether he can hear me or not. Sure. He's working on it, but he can't change what he can't, that's what he's able to do. That's what he's capable of. Yeah. You have to give to get. That's one of the things Gottman talks about. But I love how, he spells it out so well. He says the first signs of marital problems. He says 1, harsh startup. 2, 4 horsemen. 3, flooding. 4, body language. 5, failed repair attempt, which is basically like you're in an argument and your partner is trying to de-escalate that, no, I agree, you're right. And of course I'm right. When am I not right? Right. And you just blow it out. You just blow right past it. Failed repair attempts, and then bad memories. That's when you're rewriting history. That's when you're forgetting, well, what did you see in her in the first place? I don't know. Right. Couldn't even tell you. Yeah. I saw a picture she was skinny in once. Maybe it was that. Right. They can't remember what the reason is that they first were attracted to each other. And that can go both ways. Right. So that's the bad memories. But when couples get to rewriting history, and It says communication to repair current problems becomes impossible and the relationship is bound to fail without help.
Yes. And even with help, it can still fail.
Sure.
Because just because two people show up in my office, one of the first things I ask them, and I let them know, like, this is a very uncomfortable question, but I need to know, 100% you're in, like 0% you're out, like you're out the door. You're not working on this at all. 100% you're working on this. Like, where are you at? Like, I need to know where you're at. I need to know where you're at. Like, I need to know. And a lot of times one will be like, I'm 70% out the door. Okay. The other one might look and be like, I'm only 20% out the door. Okay. That's fine. At any point, you reach 100% out the door, like, you are no longer in this. Like, I need to know. Your partner needs to know. And just because 70 and 20 are in the same room doesn't mean that they can't come together and be 100% in within a few weeks. Of being like, okay, I'm seeing this. I can do this. I can work on these things.
Yeah.
Because it took two of you to get there. So it's going to take two of you to do all of the work to repair it.
To get out.
One person is not responsible for the entirety of the marriage falling apart or the relationship.
No, and it's the other thing that he mentions too. You know, we talk a lot about the four horsemen: criticism, contempt, defensive. What is it? Criticism, contempt, defensiveness,
Stonewalling.
and stonewalling. And he talks about how that's not always present.
True.
And there are some relationships where they will come in and they are calm, but they're distant. They can talk about the relationship. They can talk about the early days, but they generally have a hard time remembering why they got together or what brought them to that place, because they're both of them are really in that place of like checked out.
Yeah.
And that's what you talked about, is that he said, like, actually without the four horsemen, that those are often bound to fail too.
Because once you have apathy, apathy means you're done.
That and people think hate is the opposite of love. It's not.
No.
It's indifference. It's apathy.
Yep.
It's not giving a fuck.
Because if you hate something, there's still some effort. There's
Yes.
still something going on inside of you.
Mm-hmm.
But once, like, your give a damn is busted and you no longer care,
Right.
you're like, I'm just biding my time for A, B, or C. Now you're not only hurting yourself, you're hurting your partner and your chances of finding something better with somebody else.
Yep.
Or being able to repair things in a way that could be repaired.
Because if you think that the problems won't come up in another relationship, you're like, I mean, unless you somehow miraculously end up with somebody who is completely different and willing to, like, is really emotionally intelligent and healthy and willing to overlook whatever issues or problems, or already knows how to connect with you in that way, because you already have some kind of communication issue.
Yes.
If you've had a failed relationship, I'm sorry to tell you, I've had a failed relationship. I definitely had communication issues. I mean, I still have them, but I was starting to have them a little bit when Keith and I went to counseling, and feeling like I wasn't feeling heard and feeling like I was hitting a brick wall all the time, and him not knowing how to open up to me. It took us going to a little bit of counseling to get past that, to work together. It wouldn't have worked if I'd have gone just on my own, and it wouldn't have worked if he'd have just gone on his own, because the problem was us together.
Yes.
So I could work on what I was doing, but for that relationship, like, I can only change so much.
Yeah.
And that's going to be true for any you can work on what you're doing, but if you don't know what those triggers are, what those roadblocks are for you, what's going to constantly cause those arguments and things for you to look for, then you don't really know what to look for, what to work on.
And you might think, like, it's not me.
Right.
Like, it's him. He's not communicating.
Right.
I don't know his like, I'm doing all of the work.
I'm the one in therapy. I'm doing it all.
But once you go to couples counseling and you realize, because they're going to tell you, it's both of you. Like,
they will.
You think you know everything, and you're like, so when you decide to break up or you decide to split up and you think that you were the best communicator and they were the worst communicator, that's not true. Because it took both of you to get to be shit communicators.
Right.
If you were shit communicators in the beginning, you wouldn't have ended up together. But somewhere along the way, things shifted.
Mm-hmm.
So once people, and a big thing, I think a lot of people don't necessarily give themselves credit for, or maybe they're just scared to do it, is like when you break up from a significant relationship, a marriage, whether it's 6 months or 50 years, like you need to heal from that.
Yes.
And not healing from bad mouthing your partner, your ex, bad mouthing that person. They did this, they did like that. That's not helpful. That's not helpful.
Right.
It's like, okay, what did I do wrong in that relationship? And I've worked with people that are like, I did absolutely nothing wrong. I'm like, well, then I can't help you. Because clearly you also did something wrong. Whether it was you gave in too much, you tried to meet all their needs without even knowing what their needs were, you were too codependent, you were too independent. Like, you did your part. So let's heal from that part. Now, what do you really want and what do you don't want? And now you can go forth and actually have
Yes.
a healthy relationship. But if you're bouncing, every single one of them is going to fail.
Right.
Until you're like, well, I'm just going to settle.
Yep.
I'm just going to settle at this point.
I guess this is just how it is.
And then you're not living your best life, and you're not allowing them to live their best life.
Right.
It takes two people.
Right. Well, and that's just it. Like, you heal together in couples therapy because you're both working together.
Yes.
You will heal your own part. You can only heal your own part.
Yeah.
You cannot force anybody else to heal.
No.
You can grow with them. You can help them. You can support them. You can love them through it.
Yeah.
You can do all the things, but you can't do it for them.
No.
So, one of the, he talks about the 7 principles of marriage, and in his experience, and this is not his belief, this is his experience, following these 7 principles of marriage will lead you to have a long, rich, healthy, loving marriage.
Yes.
That will last a lifetime. And when I got through and I was reading them, like, I understand why, but they all take investment in time. And that, unfortunately, we live in a very fast-paced society where people want things instantly, now.
Right.
And it just doesn't work that way a lot of times. I mean, sometimes relationships click right away and stuff, but you're always going to have to invest work because it is unreasonable and irrational to expect 2 people to be in exactly the same place at exactly the same time all the time for the rest of their lives. For 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 years. You are constantly falling in love with a new iteration of that person as they are with you. Yes. You are growing together. Hopefully, it's not a surprise that you're like, oh, I didn't get to know you at all for the last 10 years, and now all of a sudden you're into a completely new religion and, or something like that. But hopefully it's not something that's a deal breaker. But if you follow the 7 principles, you stay so connected that you do grow together.
Yes.
Because one of the first things he talks about is
this is his
your
sound
love maps.
this is his sound house theory.
Right.
So the thing I mentioned in the beginning.
Right.
Like, so if you imagine a house and one side of the house is trust, like one of your walls is trust, the other wall is communication. And now we're building from the floor up. So the first principle, building those love maps.
Enhance your love maps. And your love maps is not what you think it is. Your love maps is how you know another person. Yeah. Well, you know their likes, their dislikes, their wants, their needs, their desires, their hopes, their dreams. The more intimately you know a person, the better the love map is, the better your relationship will be. If you know that your spouse, for instance, dreamed of being a high school or a football player and professional football, and that he wishes that he could go back to high school and redo that dream, then that can inform your decisions about how you interact with him throughout your entire marriage.
Absolutely.
Gifts, time together, interaction, entertainment, just things that he likes. Same thing with vice versa. If your spouse is somebody who dreamed of being on Broadway or something, and they never had that dream fulfilled, but you know about it, then maybe you know that taking them to Broadway would be something that they would love. Right. Or it's things like little things like that can inform to make big things. Yes. And that's what he talks about with enhancing your love map.
Yes.
that it's the number one, the first principle that he feels like start there.
Because that's your foundation.
Right.
You have to build that solid foundation. Otherwise, your shit's going to fall apart.
Right. And then you go from there to nurture your fondness and admiration, which is pretty self-explanatory.
Yeah.
But it's something that we have to reiterate again. We are talking about the longevity of your relationship. You nurture your fondness and admiration.
You did it in the beginning.
Right.
So if you did it in the beginning, why are you struggling to continue to do it?
Right.
What are those roadblocks? How can you still do them in spite of the roadblocks?
Right. And you may need help from a counselor to help you see it in a different way, to help you find a new avenue to appreciate your partner, to be able, maybe not to have fondness for them, but be able to find a new way to admire them, because you just feel like, well, maybe it's been in a rut, gotten used to the person.
Right.
Like, I know everything about them, and it's not that I don't admire them, but they're not feeling it. New ways of showing that admiration.
Yes.
And maybe you just need some help with that.
And that's okay.
But working on that, nurturing that fondness, showing your partner that you are fond of them and that you admire them.
Yeah.
For who they are as a human being, and for their hopes, their thoughts, their dreams, their wants, their needs, all of it. That's what helps build that next level. That, first you've got the love map where you know your partner, and then you are building the fondness and the admiration for them. Well, those two things together already are going to build such a close relationship between you.
Yeah.
That it just makes it easier to continue on with the 7 principles. Third, he asked you to turn toward each other instead of away.
A lot of people are like, what does that mean?
Right, I know, yeah. And it's hard for people.
And he's got a great assessment for it. He's got an assessment for all of these principles. But being able to, is your person, just like when you guys first got together, whenever you were super excited and had something to share, you went to your person. Whenever you had a really shitty day, you went to your person. Same thing. Now you're super excited about something. Oh, if I tell her, she's just going to think it's freaking stupid. So I'm not even going to bother telling her. Instead, I'm going to call my buddy. I'm going to tell him. Or, man, I had like a really terrible, shitty day. And if I tell her, she's just going to say a bitch all the time. So forget it. I'm going to stop and I'm going to have a few beers. So you're no longer turning towards your partner for support and empathy and compassion and respect. You're turning away from them and getting that somewhere else.
Because you're not receiving support,
and
empathy,
you're not
compassion,
receiving it,
and respect.
exactly.
And that's a big part of why. If you're not receiving it, then you are going to turn away. And that's where, as soon as you recognize that pattern is happening, either if you cannot stop the train from going off the tracks yourself, get a hold of a professional, get a hold of somebody to help you, and that marriage is salvageable.
Absolutely.
He talks about how many of these marriages that you would think were for sure going to head for divorce, but they started following the 7 principles, doing these things, and ended up having thriving, fulfilled, loving, content marriages. Relationships, because it doesn't have to be a marriage, but this is marriage based. The next one is one that I think people struggle with, but I think sometimes men struggle with, and it's let your partner influence you.
Right.
Not that men don't feel influenced by their partners, but he talks specifically about how letting your partner feel like they are part of the decision-making process. And like when we talked about the man who was very like, I make the decisions of the house, I am the household decision maker.
Right.
But he didn't make those decisions without talking to his wife first. And they talked it out. It wasn't that he told her what he was going to do. They talked it out. She gave him points. He took those points into consideration. He let her influence him, and she let him influence her. And so by turn, they both felt heard, respected, seen, and loved in their relationship because their partner allowed them to be influenced by them.
And not influenced in the way that they made the parody of like, oh, men should be yes, women, or yes, like, no, that's not what it is. It's the ability to respect your partner enough to have a conversation, even if it's like, hey, I think I want to get a new car. Okay. Do you have time to sit down and talk about it? Yeah, let's sit down and talk about it.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean that he or she's going to not get that new car.
Right.
But like maybe the influence is going to be like, okay, well, you don't really drive a bunch, so do you need something that's good on gas mileage? Do you want something sporty? Like asking you different questions that you may not have paid attention to. Well, remember, like I'm pregnant, so is there going to be room in the car for the kids? Like, what about pets? Do we have pets? Is it going to asking different things and being able to just have an open conversation doesn't mean that you have to take anything that they said, but it's better if you do because this is your person.
Well, it's interesting you
So
give
why
this
would you
example.
not?
When Keith and I first started dating, well, we've been dating a couple of years. We were engaged, but not married, obviously.
Mhm.
And so we've been together, we must have been together like 3-4 years at that point. And he had this old, not an old, but an older Focus that was like a hatchback. And it was a lease. And he was over on his mileage and all this stuff. And he wasn't sure what he was going to do with it. He kind of mentioned a couple of times. I said, okay, we'd talk about it. And nothing ever really concrete came out of it. And then one day he showed up at the house with a brand new Ford Focus. And it was a 2-door. And it was a manual. Now, there were 4 people in our house. And I had had a bunch of abdominal surgery, so I can drive a stick, but I had rear-ended somebody once from an abdominal spasm locking my leg into place.
Yep.
So I avoid driving sticks, and he shows up. He paid $17,000 for this car because he had to roll his lease into it. And this was back in the day when like a Focus cost you like $12, $13.
Right.
He didn't talk to me about it at all. And not only that, he had somebody drive up to the UP to get him this one because he wanted the stick. He didn't talk to me about it at all.
And you had kids.
We had kids. That was a bone of contention. He didn't hear it wasn't that we argued about it. We argued about it when he first brought it home because I was like, because the car payment was like $300 a month, and I was just like,
right.
And you do realize that it's a 2-door, so that means we now have to pay for sports car insurance because at that time that's what they did. It was 2-door. It was a sports car. So it was a higher insurance and stuff. And I remember that this caused this huge thing for a long time that I felt neither seen nor heard nor respected and concerned that he would go and do another big thing like that.
Sure.
That it took a while for us to have to be able to sit down. And it wasn't that we argued about it. It was just always like a fear that was there. We didn't get into a lot of arguments or anything about it, but it caused this hitch in our relationship.
Yeah.
And it definitely affected our ability to trust and feel smooth and communicate. And I'll tell you, every time that we had a friend that would go to have to get into the back of that car and then complain about having to get, I would just turn and look at him. And he'd be like, yep, they didn't have 4-doors when I bought this. They didn't make them. You know, or he'd crack some joke or something. And then he'd just use it to make me laugh or whatever. And we had that car until we drove it like to 300,000 miles. So we had that the whole time of its lifetime. Yeah. It was one of those things that was like such an impactful thing for me and for him because of the way it affected me. He's never wanted to make another like big decision like that again, which thankfully, thank God, because I don't make big decisions like that without him. Mm-hmm. But he just didn't get it. He was like, I don't understand. What's the big deal?
This is what I wanted.
Right.
Like, what's the problem?
I needed a car, and that's what I wanted.
And then realizing, like, it's not just about you when you're in a relationship.
Right.
It's now about everything else that's in the relationship.
He hated having to get out to let the kids out of the back of the car. Like, it drove him crazy. And I'd just be like, I don't know what to tell you. It's a 2-door. Yeah. We were stuck with that sucker. But that's like letting your partner influence you. It's kind of one of those things where you come to your partner and you talk about those big life things. And when you have that close relationship, you talk about the little ones too. Yeah. It's when you don't have the close relationship that the little ones get skated right by. You're lucky if the big ones get talked about.
Yes.
And then that's where intimacy tends to falter.
Yes, absolutely.
So turning towards each other instead of away is super important. As soon as you start noticing that you start turning away from your partner, that's when you need to recognize, it's time to sit down and go, okay, why am I turning away? Is it because she's making me feel criticized? Or is it because he's making me feel like he's contemptuous to me, or is it because he's stonewalling me, or I feel like he's not going to listen. And then you have to figure out a way to articulate that to your partner using I statements, not you statements, but I statements.
Yes.
I feel, and Gottman in this book and in these in this workbook, he gives you all of this. It's like a roadmap. It's wonderful.
Yes.
So he literally helps you construct exactly what sentence you would need to be able to talk to your partner to say, listen, I've just noticed we've been having some distance lately, and it's hurting me. And I really miss when we were close. Could we spend some time to carve out together so that we could get closer together? I miss that.
Rather than saying, like, we never do anything together.
You never even talk to me anymore. What the
Why
fuck?
am I even here?
Yeah, why am I even here? What's wrong with you?
Yeah.
One takes more time, but man,
It's worth the time.
it's so worth the time.
This is your person.
It is your person.
This is your person.
So then he goes into the two kinds of marital conflict. You have solvable and perpetual.
Yes.
And the solvable is like you're arguing over who's going to take the garbage out. And the perpetual is like you differ over literally how to save money.
Right.
And it's because of how you were raised as children. And one of you is a spender who never wants to save, and the other is a saver. These are going to be, that might be a perpetual problem that you might have to learn how to navigate.
Yeah.
You can still have a healthy, robust, wonderful relationship.
Absolutely.
Maybe your partner is somebody who shops all the time but returns half of what they spend so that you don't actually go over your budget. But it gets their spending, I think that's an example he gave in the book, but it gets their spending thing out, and gets their addiction out, and that they're still going to make sure that the budget is met so you can just rest easy that savings are there because you already have that set aside. But if they don't know that that's important to you, really important to you,
Yes.
and you don't take the time to know what's really important to them, then you can't come to a meeting of that. So I think that the perpetual problems he talks about are the ones that are the majority of problems.
Yes.
Like 67% of the problems
They're huge.
are perpetual problems.
But if we're having conversations and we're letting our partners have their say when we're doing step number
Respectfully.
4 and we're doing the influence thing, then we're able to see, like, okay, it's really important that we stay on budget because of all of these things, retirement, blah, 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 blah. I feel comfortable giving you, not giving, but like, let's say you have this much money to do whatever you want to do with. I have this much money to do whatever I want to do with. And we just let that be, but we don't touch this because this is the house, this is our retirement, this is our livelihood bills.
Yep.
Like, let's come to an agreement. And if we need to adjust that agreement anytime, we both need to sit down together and have another conversation. But if we don't ever have that conversation, half of all marriages are financial divorces and the other half are sex divorces.
Right.
So let's avoid those by talking more about those.
And he talks about the next principle of 5 is solve your solvable problems.
Solve the solvable ones.
Agree who's going to take out the garbage. Agree who's going to, if you're going to split dishes, or if one of you is going to cook and one of you is going to clean up.
Yeah.
Just come to an agreement about it. Don't be bitter doing the dishes all the time because you really wish that you had help and your partner has no idea, or they have some idea, but they don't know it matters as much to you as it does.
Because you're not saying anything.
It's seething inside. Right, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It's solve your solvable problems. And if you can't figure out what your solvable problems are versus your perpetual ones are, Gottman actually has a little thing in there. Yeah, he's got a checklist. It's like, this is, and he gives you examples.
Yes.
And then he says, like, and this is why it's perpetual, and this is why it's solvable.
Mm-hmm.
And so then you can then extrapolate from that and translate it to your own life.
Yeah.
So I thought that was super helpful.
Oh, absolutely.
He then gets into principle 6, overcoming gridlock. And gridlock is when, like, you are just in a place where you're like, we can't see eye to eye.
Yes.
We can't agree. We just can't. Nothing that you say this, I say this, you say red, I say blue.
Mm-hmm.
And he actually gives you key phrases and things like sometimes you just have to agree to disagree.
Yes.
And say, we're going to set that agreement aside, and say that's something that we actually can't agree on. So we don't talk politics.
Right.
Because we can't agree on that.
Yeah.
Or we can't agree on sports. So he watches sports, I don't get involved in it.
Mm-hmm.
Whatever it is. it doesn't matter, but you have to be able to figure out where those problems are that are going to be gridlock.
Yeah.
And then if you can't overcome them yourself, again, bring in a professional, bring in somebody to help you out to get over that, because a lot of times those problems are more solvable than you realize.
Yes.
It's just you couldn't think of it because you're stuck in your own perception. Yeah. And that's the thing about a relationship. He says in there, a relationship is basically two people's perceptions that you've decided that you're going to agree on the same stuff.
Right.
You're going to agree that these things are true, these things exist, these things are right, this is what we want, this is the life we want. It's a perception. And if you don't have perceptions that match up together, then that's when you start to have some of those mismatches in your relationship, and it can certainly cause gridlock.
Yeah, because ultimately you want to make your dreams come true.
Right.
And in the very beginning, you were aligned on everything. Right. So how do we get back there so that we can avoid the gridlock and we can make our dreams come true? Even if it's he loves sports or she loves sports, they love sports, and you don't, but you want to spend that time. Well, I want you to spend that time with me instead of the game. Okay, well, the game's very important to them. Mm-hmm. So now you have time to do whatever you want to do. Mm-hmm. Maybe you go get your nails done. Right. Maybe you go golfing with the guys because they want to go to the hockey game. Whatever it is, like, you can still do things that are good for you and let them do things that are good for them. They don't have to match all the time. Right. That's okay.
Yeah, that's what he says, is that gridlock is basically, it boils down to unrealized dreams.
Yep.
And so it's something I desperately wanted or needed that you are not understanding. And so you're not seeing it, you're not hearing it. Yep. I'm not feeling seen, I'm not feeling heard, whatever it is, and vice versa. And you have to be able to, and you are, the gridlock is like, they're not getting it. They're not understanding my point of view.
Right. So I'm going to keep I'm going to keep poking at them. I'm going to keep telling. They're never going to get it.
No.
So how can we do things differently?
Right. Right.
And that's okay.
And that's when compromise comes in. Mm-hmm. And that's when you take the time to look at what is important in the relationship. Is this thing you're fighting over important, or is the relationship itself important?
Yes, that's what I ask clients all the time. I'm like, in the grand scheme of things, what's more important? Is this the hill you're willing to die on?
Yes.
Is this the fight you're willing to lose your partner over?
Right.
If the answer is yes, I don't even know why we're still here.
Right.
If the answer is no, okay, then let's look at it differently.
Right. And it's not even let's move on. Let's look at it differently. Yes. Maybe we can look at a different perspective. Maybe you can look at it from a different angle.
Yeah.
And then last is creating shared meaning.
Which is huge. And that's the roof. Like, that's the most important piece at the top, being able to have that shared meaning between the two of you, your family, your goals, your hopes, your dreams, and being able to enjoy your life the way you wanted to. Mm-hmm. Even if you got married and you hit 20 years and it's been a shit show for the couple, 2, 3, 4 years, doesn't mean that the rest of your life is going to continue to be a shit show.
Right.
Because we need to look at the house.
Right.
What do we need to tweak within the house? Now we're back to our roof and everything is sound.
Right. Correct. Yeah. And he also talks a lot about sex and intimacy.
Yes.
And that's separately in there, and he gets into 5 ways to make sex more personal and romantic. Mm-hmm. And then he gives you the 5 ways, which are to redefine what you mean by sex, to learn how to talk about it, don't take it personally, by the way, to chart your sexual love maps, which means what turns your partner on. Does your partner know what turns you on?
Right.
Right, and not the basics, the little things, kissing on the neck, those little things that are special for you. Does your partner knows those things too, or do they just go straight to caressing your boobs or grabbing your junk or whatever? Have ongoing conversations about sexual intimacy,
which is uncomfortable for a lot of people.
It can be very uncomfortable. The more you do it, the less uncomfortable it is. It then honestly becomes something you can look forward to. And it becomes a way to learn more about your partner, learn a way to please your partner. And if you are in love with your partner, that is ultimately what you want to do.
Right.
You want to please your partner. And so having those conversations just gives you greater depth and intimacy, or aspects into their intimacy and to what their needs are. Because it's not just about what you think their needs are. They might be changing, especially if you've gone through a big life.
Yes. Yes.
Any kind of big milestone in life, you know, having a child, school, work, changes in work, kids getting out of school, kids moving out of the house. All of these things can change your partner losing or gaining weight. Even those things can change how your partner's feeling about themselves. And it's not that you want to be like, hey, I noticed you gained some weight, so how are you feeling about yourself?
Right.
It's not what you want to do. But you do want to check in and be like, you know, I just want to check in and make sure that we're still on the same page and everything's good. This is how I'm feeling. And start with how you're feeling. And I love when you do this for me. I love when you do this to me. I love when this happens.
Yes.
I miss this. I miss when we used to do this. And it's not about you don't do this, you don't do that, it's nothing about that. You talk about yourself, your needs, your wants, and how you would like to express that to your partner. And then your partner will most likely follow suit.
Hopefully.
Yeah, hopefully. I mean, and if they don't, again, a professional, and this isn't where you need a sex therapist, you would just need a couples counseling professional can help you with sexual intimacy.
Yeah.
If you're just struggling with intimacy and connecting, a couples counselor is perfectly fine.
Absolutely.
So that's not something that you would need to worry about. Oh, I have to find the right professional. Just a regular counselor can help you with intimacy. But following programs like Gottman tend to have found to be more successful than things like just learning active listening and trying to put yourself in your partner's shoes.
Right.
Because most people aren't able to do that.
No.
So, and then the last thing that he says with sex is that you have to learn how to initiate sex and refuse it gently. So, and that goes for both sides. So ladies, it's not just their job to initiate. And guys.
Men, it's okay for you to say no.
Yeah, it's okay for you to say no. Absolutely. You're tired. It's okay. It's nice to make a plan to make up for it. So, not feeling it today, but could we maybe talk about it tomorrow? Ladies, if the evenings are not the best time for you, let your husband know or your boyfriend know. I do better in the mornings, or I do better with afternoon sex or whatever. Let them know when you're feeling the best so that you can enjoy it the best. Same thing for you guys. If there's a time of the day that's best for you, if there's something that you need that's best for you to enjoy it, you need to be able to open up to your partner intimately. And that's one thing that Gottman is really good about, helping people understand and be comfortable with. Yeah. Which I loved. So, you know, there's so much more that Gottman talks about, but I don't know what else you wanna talk about. But I know for me, the 4 horsemen, and then talking about the 7 principles. Yeah. And then sexual intimacy are the ones that not only helped my marriage, but that I consistently go back to and either look at like, oh, avoid those, or, you know, like that was, or include more of that. And he gives you, in here, he gives it, and I'm going to put it up on our fridge, but he gives you like, I feel statements and I appreciate statements. And I can't remember where I saw you found that.
It's in there somewhere.
Yeah, it's in here somewhere.
And that's like the whole, the Gottman method is built on these 7 principles. Right. So like this seminar can be given, I don't want to say by anybody, but it, like, clergymen can be trained to do it, like community leaders, educators can be trained to just do this seminar, and then following it up with someone that actually understands Gottman's technique, that actually understands the methods to help you go even deeper. That's ideal. It's just, it's like, I can't express it enough. And I love, just like when we talked about DBT and that book that we showed last time, like, it's got everything in it. Like, Gottman's, all of their work, all of their books, all of their workbooks have everything in it. So even if you're like, all right, well, I don't know if we need necessarily a counselor, but I heard about all this Gottman shit, so let me buy all this Gottman shit. Hey, are you willing to do this? Let's sit down. You can get super far in it just by doing that.
On your own. Yeah.
And if you hit roadblocks, okay, maybe you note those areas, those roadblocks. Maybe you bring in a third party for that. Maybe you don't need to. Maybe you're able to work through them. But the key is that the two of you have to be able to be willing and open to trying something different.
Yes.
Because literally, if nothing changes, nothing changes.
Well, some things may change. You may end up divorced.
Yeah.
Or just living a miserable marriage or relationship out for the rest of your life.
Yeah. And who the hell wants that? You're given this one life.
Right.
Do you really want it to be any more miserable?
There's plenty of stuff to make us miserable in the
my
world.
God, yeah.
Our partner doesn't need to be one of them.
No, they should be the best part of our life.
They should be.
Not counting our kids, because we love you, children.
Right, we do.
We love you, grandchildren.
Grandchildren, yes, absolutely.
But like, our partner's our person.
Right. It's our human. It should be our best friend. Keith is, I have my best friends, my girlfriends, but Keith is my best friend. He is the one that when a tragedy happens, he's the first one I want to call. And when something amazing happens, he is the first one I want to call and celebrate with. So, and that has not changed, and it's been almost 21 years. And
That's
a lot of
awesome.
that comes from, it is.
Yeah.
And a lot of that comes from us. We naturally did a lot of the Gottman stuff, but having learned even more of it, it just has, like he said, it strengthened our relationship. It strengthened us as people on our own, and then together as a couple. I mean, people always say, oh, you guys, relationship goals. Oh, your marriage is so great. And people will tell us, your marriage looks so easy. And I'll laugh. It is not easy.
No, marriage is the hardest thing.
I have a wonderful marriage. It is not easy.
No.
It is a constant work in progress.
Mm-hmm.
So that is what you will learn with anything that is worthwhile, I think, is that you have to put the effort into it. And marriage is one of those things, like I said, you've got two people that are constantly growing and learning and evolving and changing throughout their lives. So you've got to keep growing and learning and evolving and changing with them if you want it to work. But
every day you have to literally wake up and choose your person.
Yes, you do.
Whether you feel it or not,
you
have to choose your person.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, it's not going to work.
You're right.
It's not going to work.
Yeah. If you're choosing your friends or your job or your family or anything else above your person, then you are not going to have the fulfilling, connecting relationship that is possible.
Yep.
You may have a relationship that lasts a lifetime, but it won't be one that will have the true fulfillment, the true connection, and where you feel truly supported yourself too.
Yeah.
So.
Absolutely.
And Gottman's repair checklist is on page 57 of the workbook if anybody gets it. But
that is a good checklist.
It is a great checklist, and I'm going to put it up on the fridge because I had meant to get it out of the book, but now that I see it in here, I'm going to put it up there. But it has I feel sorry, get to yes, I need to calm down, stop action, and I appreciate. And it's got all these little phrases. I need to calm down. Saying I need to calm down. Can you just tell me you love me? I never even thought of using that, but that would calm somebody down, wouldn't it?
Mm-hmm.
If you just stopped for a moment and said, can you just tell me you love me? Now, I guess it would depend on what type of relationship you have, but with Keith, that would work.
True. Very true.
So, but even though, can we take a break? I'm starting to feel flooded. Can we talk about something else for a while?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So they have a lot of great, just pre-made little phrases for you to say. You just have to learn a couple of them, and they can be go-to things for you until you start learning these skills more gracefully.
Yeah.
And are able to implement them more easily.
And if your kids are able, if you have kids,
mm-hmm.
and your kids are able to see you having conversations, you don't want to hide your struggles from the kids.
No.
But you also don't want to bring your kids into your relationship drama, because that's just not healthy.
Right.
But it's healthy for kids to see you have disagreements, for you to not be okay with each other, but they need to see you come back and fix it.
Right.
If they just see you fighting all the time and arguing all the time, and you make up behind closed doors, and then the next day everything's fine, the kids then learn, okay, we need to kind of walk on some eggshells. We need to figure out, we don't know what mood anybody's in now, because they were just fighting yesterday, now everything's okay. What happened? So being able to show them, and kids are nosy and they want to come in and be like, hey, mommy and daddy are trying to have mommy, daddy, whatever. We're trying to have a conversation about the fight that we had. We're going to come and talk to you in a little bit, but right now it's grown-up time.
Right.
So they're able to see you have a conversation, and then you go and say, I'm really sorry. We shouldn't have yelled in front of you, or like, we should have handled that better. That was our fault, so that your kids also know they didn't cause it.
Right.
Because kids don't know when they're English. They don't know when they're that little that what you're fighting about has nothing to do with them. Or if you're fighting about the kids, you probably don't want to fight about the kids where the kids can hear you, because that's not great either.
Right. And kids need to see that those things that it is repairable, that it didn't just magically go away.
Yes.
It's repairable, and mommy and daddy are going to be okay, or mommy, or daddy and daddy, or whatever that combination may be. But
absolutely. It's so important. It's
Yeah.
so important.
Yeah.
Because as kids, just think back
Kids are
to our
sponges.
relationship and what we saw our parents do.
Uh-huh.
And it's like, I never want to do that. Or like, hey, that was pretty cool. I want to do that. But they don't learn all the healthy, wonderful things. You watch it play out in their own adult relationships.
Right.
And then you're like,
you're like, fuck, that was me.
Yeah, that's me. Hey, let's
Yeah,
talk about this. Let's talk about this.
And then it's, it's a little too late. It's damage done a lot of times. They're an adult, and they know, and they do not want your advice.
No.
Certainly not on something you could not do gracefully yourself.
Yeah.
So why the fuck do they want to listen to you tell them how to do it?
Until they realize, okay, now I'm ready to hear
Right.
why I do this. Because you've been telling me, and I wasn't ready. Now I want to know. And being like, well, you saw me do exactly the same thing. So it makes sense why you would then do that. Well, how do I do it different now? Excellent question. Let's bring in your partner.
Right.
How can we do it differently? But not that everybody has those relationships with their kids, and not that everybody even wants to.
Well, and some kids are going to just learn by watching their parents model it.
Yes.
And that's, and that's fine too. That's fine too. But I think that overall, Gottman is one of those therapeutic techniques that can be implemented in any stage or type of relationship, because I can see it working for parents and children. A lot of the things that he says for a parental-child relationship, I can see it working between friends, and then of course for the intimate relationships is what it's geared towards. But it all comes down to just community respect, listening to another person, just taking another person's point of view into account, giving that respect. If we could all do that, just on a blanket level across the whole world would be a better place. So what I'm saying is that we all have to do Gottman therapy, just planet-wide. We just all have to do the 7 principles, and then the planet will be healed.
And I think it's super important and great and magical and wonderful when couples, when they get together, whether they decide we're going to be long-term, whether we're going to get engaged, whether we're going to get married or whatever, at any point, if you know that you want to go longevity with this person, whether or not you get married, do a couples seminar.
Right.
Go to couples counseling. It's not just marriage counseling, it's couples counseling.
Correct.
Go to that. Even if you're like, we don't have anything to talk about, I guarantee you will have lots to talk about.
Yeah, I wish you would rename it 7 Principles for Making Relationships Work.
Yes. Yeah. Because it's more and more people are deciding to not get married for a variety of reasons, because you don't have to be married in order to get insurance like you used to back in the day. You don't have to be married for certain things. Some things you do, unfortunately, but that is what it is. But ultimately, these are huge. Having to go to a seminar or going to couples counseling or something even before you're married, and not like the 3 or 6 times you have to meet with the church person in order to get married in the church. That's not it. That's not it.
That's not what we're talking about. No. Not to say there's no benefit to that. There's going to be other
things that are going to come up. There's going to be other things. So why not get ahead of them before they even happen? Yeah. Why not be proactive instead of reactive?
Imagine if you learned the skills before you even started having the problems.
That'd be fantastic.
Imagine.
Imagine that.
Imagine.
That would be wonderful.
Yeah.
So yeah, so I'm really glad that you guys went to the seminar, did couples counseling, like learn some more because it's huge.
It
It's
is.
huge. That's
is.
awesome. I'm so happy for you guys.
Me too.
That's great.
He's a good one. He's a good
He
egg.
is. Yes, we'll keep him.
Yeah. Yeah, we'll keep him. So what you think, Mr. Icon there, sir? Questions, comments? I saw
too am
lots
a
of
big
facial
fan of Keith.
expressions.
Well,
There was a
come
lot
on.
of facial expressions.
You know, we could spend another hour and a half easily in trying to, not even trying, incorporating what you guys have talked about into different shit that I have or am dealing with. So a lot of what you said today here resonated on multiple levels. I have picked up on different things that I am or have done right, and then in turn I have seen where I may have fucked up here or there. But at the same time, this is one of those things that needs to be talked about. It needs to be highlighted. I really want to spend more time talking to Keith about this because I want his perspective on it. And the one thing that he did say that resonated, and I need the men who tune into this to listen to.
Yeah.
There is absolute no sign of weakness to go seek help in some regard if it means bettering your relationship.
Mm-hmm.
There's nothing wrong with that.
It takes a strong man.
Well, right. And then I've talked about this on the flagship show ad nauseum. So to get reiteration from you guys, it solidifies that point. Mm-hmm. Because this is nothing that I have not preached until the sun goes down time and time and time again. Because I need men to understand that this stigma that we don't share our feelings, we don't dive into all that like that is retired. That is passé. That is no longer a thing. And if you continue to adopt that philosophy, you will never have the truly fulfilling life that you ultimately want.
Absolutely.
You cannot argue that.
Right.
And if you try to, you are just stirring the pot of fuckery that you will continue to live your life in. I recognized that a while ago. I made some very tough choices to get to a point to where because I was not happy. I was not happy with the way my life was going. I wasn't happy with the way I was feeling. I wasn't happy with the way I was treated. I was devalued. I was not heard, and I was not respected. I can't live my life like that. I made the decision to change that.
Yeah.
As uncomfortable as it is, much like what Natalie was saying, you're talking about having very uncomfortable conversations. And as long as both parties are meeting in the middle to have those conversations, there's hope. But as soon as the two-way street becomes one way, you are going right towards a dead fucking end.
Yeah.
That's where I'm at.
Yep.
And I recognize that. So to hear this conversation this week, it, like I said, it solidifies the fact that I'm doing a lot of things right here. But it also points out, going forward, I could probably do this a little bit different. I could probably say that a little bit different. So it's not just a me. So it's not perceived as a me thing because it is a two-way street.
True.
Any relationship is. I don't give a fuck what the dynamic looks like. It doesn't matter. If there's two people involved, there's 2 points of view. There's 2 sets of feelings. There's 2 sets of everything. You have to meet in the middle. If you do not meet in the middle, you are on borrowed fucking time.
Yep.
I mean, like I said, I could go on here for another hour, but this was a good episode. And like I said, I want to get Keith back on here, whether it's on here or my show. I would love to dive deeper into the male perspective of this. Mm-hmm. So that other men can realize, we're manly men, but we're still able to tap into our feelings, and it's okay. because
It's
we
very
have them too, goddammit. We're not robots.
Exactly.
And people
Yeah.
need to be reminded of that.
Keith's a big manly dude. Like, nobody would meet Keith and think there was anything girly about him. And he is still one of the most compassionate, caring, thoughtful, sweet, kind, gentle, and still tough. And like all the things
Right.
that he needs to be to be masculine, he meets all of those qualities, but he has all of these gentle qualities too. And that allowed him to step into the realm of therapy without a lot of self-recrimination or blame or shame or guilt or anything like that a lot of men have to get through first,
Right.
before they can start to do work, which was part of why we were only in therapy or couples counseling for about 6 months.
Right.
Before our counselor was like, listen, you guys, he literally told us, he's like, you guys are masters. There's like not a lot for us to do here. So, I'm going to discharge you, and, if you need help, let me know. But,
Right.
and then I've reached out to him since, and he's doing some different stuff with couples counseling, because Keith and I do have another issue, and we're going to go back to couples counseling. And he's started his own counseling on his own that he started, and he's been, he goes regularly. I don't ask him about his sessions. If he wants to tell me something, he'll tell me, but
Right.
I don't ask him about what happens in there. So he goes on his Mondays. I make sure that I stay out of the way. He does his thing. I make sure that he has time to decompress. And then when gets to a point where he's like, okay, we really need to get into couples counseling, because there's a portion that he has to work through himself.
Sure.
Before we can do any real work in couples counseling.
Mhm.
That's where we're headed.
Yeah.
And we're headed there. We are headed there not with me thinking, and you did this thing wrong, or you're the problem. I am already ready to walk in there and go, okay, so what do I need to do for myself? What do I need to change myself?
Yes.
Because he is not all the problem. And when we get into what the actual issue is, I think listeners will actually be like, are you kidding? But
Right.
it's one of those stigma things that our society just puts so much stigma against men, against their role in society, against sexuality, and against their role in relationships, and how open or vulnerable they are allowed to be, and how that defines their masculinity.
Sure.
And it's up to people like us to change that narrative.
Yes.
So I appreciate you, Jason, for doing that, for being a guy out there like trumpeting it, so that it's not us just us ladies going, no, seriously, guys, you can go to therapy and it's super healthy for you.
No, it's a big contributor to the overall, this stigma that surrounds men.
Yeah.
Is really, I'm going to say this, and there'll be a few dudes that'll be like, this motherfucker is off his rocker, or listen, one of the worst feelings I have ever felt, that I have ever personally felt, is being told that my feelings, my concerns, my issues do not matter.
Right.
So what you're telling me is that one of the most fundamental pieces of who I am and what is internally going on, it don't matter to you.
Right.
Well, if that don't matter to you, I don't matter to you. And if I don't matter to you, what in the hell am I wasting my time here for?
Yes.
Right.
If you do not have a partner that is receptive to, or as receptive to your feelings as you are expected to be for theirs, this is a recipe for disaster. I know this because I'm in the midst of this shit right fucking now.
What did I say, Jason? What should your partner be saying? You are hurting, and so the world stops and I listen.
Yes.
Yeah, well, that I can see when that is not a thing, why it causes residual issues that it does.
Yes.
And you can do one of two things. You can either try to stick it out in hopes that there's this magical epiphany that, whoa, I'm fucking up here, or you realize what is really happening, and you realize, okay, this is not going to happen. I've tried. I've gone every other route with it to try to bring it to the table in a constructive, manner, respectful too. But you know, when your partner has systematically shut down the importance of your feelings, at least with me, and I know I'm not everybody, and I don't speak for everybody,
Yeah.
but I'm out. I have checked the fuck out, and once I have checked out, something extraordinary has to happen for me to get re-engaged, because
That's
that's
pretty normal.
my level of patience at that point, and I have bucket loads of it. Make no mistake. Anybody who knows me will tell you this. Once I have crossed that point of no return, there ain't no coming back.
Yeah.
And I will seek my happiness, even if it's with myself. I will seek it elsewhere, so I am not marred with the walking on eggshells, with the feeling of inadequacy, which leads into other aspects of the relationship.
Sure.
Intimacy is
Yes.
on the horizon here. So it's a trickle down effect. Men, I'm telling you, if something is not firing on all cylinders, you have every damn right to voice your concern, because your feelings matter too.
Yes,
You
they
have
do.
them. You are not a robot. You were not made on assembly line. You matter too, and your feelings matter too. And it's
Yes.
about goddamn time we shake the stigma that showing any kind of emotions or addressing things that are not in your best interest makes you weak, for the lack of better term. See, I almost went into a goddamn promo here, and we don't need that at this juncture.
But you're right. That was what that was what we said earlier, was that our society unfortunately gives men about this much space to feel emotion, which is happy, angry, justified angry. Be careful there, because if you get too much, then you're crazy.
Right.
But just justified angry, and then content. That's it. You can be content. That's it. Sad only like if your mom dies. And then you got like 15 minutes where you can cry, make sure nobody sees you in the corner.
Right.
Society's gotten better about it, but we are nowhere near where we need to be.
No.
We're just now starting to tolerate men having a full spectrum of emotions and not labeling them as something as less than.
Yes.
And that's not even in all aspects of society. It's only certain parts.
Mm-hmm.
So it's people that have a higher emotional intelligence. And emotionally intelligent just means that you're more in tune with your thoughts, emotions, needs, what's going on in your own body and with other people as well. People who've gone through a lot of therapy tend to have higher emotional intelligence.
Yes.
So you don't always, but tend to. People who have higher emotional intelligence will give more grace for people to have more emotion, because we understand emotion. I've said this many times. Emotions are messengers. It's true for men just as it is for women.
Yes.
They need all of them. You need all these emotions, and you need to be able to experience them and feel them freely, but safely.
Mm-hmm.
And we need to be able to create environments where we can do that.
Absolutely.
And have everybody feel like they have a space to do that, and not feel like it can only be women, or it can only be men that get really angry. And, women, if women get too angry, then we're labeled like complete basket cases. So it's just a whole process. But I appreciate the Gottman's work and what they've done in relationships. This has been, 30 years now of them?
50.
50.
Well, longer than 50.
Oh, yeah, because it was in the 70s.
Because I'll be 50. And started even before I was born.
So half a century of them dedicating their lives to studying relationships. And that's why, even though Gottman got made fun of for his beliefs, he still stands behind them, because he has observed them in lab through thousands of hours of observation of couples from all gambit and all different creed, type, race, religion, socioeconomic status, doesn't matter. He's observed it all.
Yep.
And and all of these 7 principles stand true across the board. When you follow these 7 principles, relationships stand strong. Yeah. And when you start to divert from them, the 4 horsemen can start to come in. And when that starts to happen, then relationships can really start to suffer.
Yes.
And if both partners don't put an effort to work on it, to change it, it can't be one partner trying to fix it. That is not a feasible solution.
No.
You both didn't fix it. You both didn't break it. Or I'm sorry, one of you didn't break it. One of you can't fix it.
Right.
Both of you broke it. Both of you have got to fix it. If one person cannot be putting in effort while the other person is going, well, it's all your fault. It's all your fault.
Yes. Because it's
just not going to happen.
It's doomed.
And it happens men do it to women. Women do it to men. It happens on both sides. And it just needs, if you want to have a successful relationship, and I mean, divorce is expensive. You know, marriage is expensive. All of this shit is expensive. Like, but it's emotionally expensive.
Yes.
If nothing else,
Yeah.
it's emotionally expensive to go through this. So maybe don't spend so much in your emotions without making sure that you're doing it in a thoughtful way and that you're doing it with a person who's willing to thoughtfully do it with you.
Yes. 100%.
Right? Even if they don't know all the steps, they're willing to take the time to learn.
Yeah.
Like Keith. So.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I like it.
I got a good one.
Yeah, you do.
I know.
You do.
He's mail order.
He probably was.
He was.
Probably was.
I filled out a little sheet.
Check the boxes.
Yeah, check the boxes. Drew a little picture. Got what I wanted.
If only it was that easy. If only it was that easy.
I was sitting here thinking the same thing. If only that was a thing, it would solve so many problems.
It would. It really would.
It's
You
not
know,
that easy.
we don't build a bear here. We build a mate. So
That's right. Build a man. Build a partner.
yeah.
Where's that build a partner website
Build a
I can
spouse.
go to? Build a spouse.
Yeah. Well, it's not that easy, but the 7 principles for making marriage work actually are that easy. They sound so simple and easy, but they really are.
Yeah, they are really.
It's just about having 2 people willing to put in the work.
Yep.
So, well, this was a good episode.
I agree.
So that's how you make waffles and spaghetti work, people.
Waffles and spaghetti.
That's how you make it work. And let me tell you, it's delicious together. I live it every day of my life, and I love it.
Well, on that note, go ahead and remind everybody if you have questions, comments, feedback, show topic ideas, anything of the sort, hit the ladies up over on the Facebook page. Look for Shh, We Don't Talk About That. Very interactive, very active every single day, man. My notifications just pop up with different people doing, sharing, liking, commenting. Love that for you guys. So obviously you're making the needle move here. Check out the website, pfcnetwork.net. This show has its own tab on there. Still a work in progress, but you can go to that and it will bring up the show page for this and all of our great shows here on the PFC network. With that, go out this week, be awesome to yourselves and to each other, and we will see you next time right here on Shh, We Don't Talk About That on the PFC Entertainment Network.